Welcome to Military Matters, hosted by retired Major Ricky Harrold and Lieutenant Colonel George Fleck. This is a show about, for, and everything regarding veterans. We're all about the issues impacting the lives of our military brothers and sisters, and our mission is to always be insightful, factual, and thought-provoking. 10
Welcome to Military Matters. This is Major Ricky Harrold, retired. I'm going to have a couple subjects that we're going to talk about today that are important to our veterans and especially to our countrymen out there in regards to what's going on. The first thing I want to talk about is we've changed from 1947 to 2025. We changed the name of our military establishment from the Department of War to the Department of Defense. And the President of the United States just changed it back to the Department of War. So it's going to be a real mind change for a lot of people who just automatically say DOD. Now it's DOW. And it's just a mental note that people will have to start doing when they're referring to the Pentagon and mission capable issues, and especially when it comes to appropriations and we're talking about the military budget. It's all going to be about the Department of War now. It's not a big mind change, but as far as think about all the pieces of paper that the federal government fills out on forms, active duty forms. We talk about that's a Department of Defense 214 form, right? Well, that won't be the case. It'll be a DOW. And I don't know if the form will be a 214 form or maybe it'll be a DOW 5 form. You know what I'm saying? All those things in the bureaucracy will now have to change, and it will take at least 18 months for that to filter through all the agencies, all the departments, like the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Army, the U.S. Coast Guard. All of those agencies will have to redo all of their paperwork that deals with their organization and the organization of the Department of War in general. So the forms that we're all so used to calling and talking about are now changing over to the Department of War. And it's not a huge cost issue. It's just a massive bureaucratic process by which we're going to change documentation. And so everybody needs to be aware of that. And it's not coming, it's here. It's just a matter of the process by which all those new numbers and designations get processed through the bureaucracy. So that's something that everyone needs to take into consideration when you're filling out forms for active duty and military retirees, as well as our veterans out there when they want to deal with federal documents that they have to refer to. And so you're going to have to go on the Department of War website and actually look up the new designated. They'll have the old number, the old name, and then they'll have it transferred to the new one. So it's not like you'll have to memorize this stuff. You just have to look up the Department of War registry of documents, and it'll be a different nomenclature. So people will just have to be versatile enough to go make a bit of research to figure out what we've always automatically thought we knew, but now it has actually changed. So that's one of the things. And now I want to transition over to the Department of War situation that comes with appropriations. This is the end of the fiscal year, and the fiscal year starts on 1 October 24 and ends on 30 September 2025. So the new fiscal year that the government is currently working on for the new, because appropriations on an annual basis is for 1 October 2025 to 30 September 2026. And that's what we're talking about. All the money that's been appropriated for the Department of War has already been allocated for this fiscal year, which ends in a couple weeks. So where we're at is we're near on, I don't know the exact number, because the reason I don't know the exact number is because the Department of War and the federal government doesn't know the exact number themselves, what the actual amount that the Department of War is going to need for fiscal year 2026. And the approximate, and we call it a WAG. WAG, for those out there who don't know that acronym, means wild ass guess. The WAG is it's going to be right around, pretty close to 1 trillion. That's how much the Department of War is going to need just for general appropriations. We're talking about paying military salaries, civilian salaries, auxiliary contractor salaries, and then, of course, all the appropriations for purchasing major military equipment. And most of the military equipment that's in the pipeline is over a 5-year plan. So when they're going to say, we're going to build so many rockets for the Army and the Navy and the Marine Corps, because they use approximately the same type of ammunition. So all the rockets that they're going to use for 2026 has been allocated in the appropriation year of 2024 for a 5-year allocation. So when they say we're going to build 1,000 or 1 million rockets, that's not over one fiscal year. That's over a period of 5 years. And right now, the biggest allocation for the armed forces is 155 millimeter shells for, and that's used, that 155 is used by the Army exclusively, but the Marines use it as well. And that ammunition has been depleted extensively for the conflict in the Ukraine. We've taken our stockpile, that's usually a 2 or 3 year stockpile, and we're down to less than 8 months of ammunition in our stockpile. And it takes years to produce this ammunition. I mean, it's high explosive, it's shock and shell. There's 3 or 4 different munitions that comes out of the tubes of a 155 millimeter gun. So that's just one item on the list of thousands of items that the Department of War will now actually have to purchase over a period of time. And one of the things that we're allocating that's big money is 35, which is the stealth fighter. That stealth fighter, by the way, is not just for the Air Force, it's for the Marine Corps and for the Navy. We're supposed to, the 5-year allocation on that has been upgraded because they were expecting to build 1,500 of these aircraft over a 5 to 10 year period. Well, now they've accelerated that to over 2,000. So the actual production for these aircraft has to be accelerated. And I don't even want to get into what's going on with the Navy, because the Navy is supposed to be able to build littoral ships, which means ships that are in the open sea. Now we're talking about corsairs, cruisers, frigates, fast frigates, oilers, all different kinds of naval ships that support the fleet, as well as upgrades for the current aircraft carriers and new aircraft carriers, Ford-class aircraft carriers coming online to replace the old Nimitz class that are now being taken out of service, out of commission. The first Nimitz class is already out of commission, and they're supposed to be replaced with Ford-class aircraft carriers. Well, the total amount of aircraft carriers right now that are commissioned on active service is 11, but not 11 are actually at sea. We're only talking maybe 6 currently, possibly 7 if they had to move the rotation, but that sounds like a lot. But we're going to get into another subject here later on about what's going on in the Indo-Pacific, and I'll talk about that later. So we got 6 aircraft carriers. Matter of fact, I was just in San Diego last year, and, I was shocked because in Coronado Bay in San Diego, there was 4 aircraft carriers in San Diego, of which 3 of them were under repairs and replenishment. They were all sealed up, being worked on, and there was only one, that was the Abraham Lincoln, that was actually in port that could deploy to sea. The other 3 were all under some form of rehabilitation and reconstruction. But as far as the Navy is concerned, those are commissioned and active aircraft carriers. But in reality, they're not seaworthy. I mean, they could, I guess if you wanted to rush them, it's classified how long it would take them to get back into seaworthiness, but let's just take, once again, a WAG, and it probably would be 3 to 4 months at the earliest you could get those ships back out to sea. And here's the worst part. We're talking about the ships with all the new avionics and all of the new ship-to-shore communications and all of the new weapons, munitions that are put on these aircraft carriers. You know what the biggest problem is? Manpower. It takes, for these old Nimitz-class carriers, it takes 4,500 officers and enlisted men to man this ship. That's just one ship, 4,500. Now, the Nimitz class, because it's not the Nimitz class, but the Ford class, the newest aircraft with the dynamic catapult system, that system has like 2,900 soldiers, or not soldiers, sailors and airmen on board that ship. But still, they don't have the 2,900 men. They have the material, but they don't have the staff. So even if we got all of these ships out to sea, there wouldn't be enough naval personnel. They'd have to strip most of the continental United States seaports, naval seaports, of their personnel to man those ships if they had to go to sea. And that's not a joke. That's reality, folks.
That's a recruitment issue right there, right?
It's not just a recruitment issue. It's a training issue. I mean, you can hire these officers, and you can hire these NCOs, and you can hire these seamen, right? But you got to train them. Not just going through the technical schools and the avionics schools and all this other stuff that they got to learn, right? But then they have to go out to sea and put that into practice. And that just doesn't happen with a snap of your finger. It takes months, sometimes years, to get one seaman to be able to run a 5-inch gun.
And we're behind in the production of ships also, correct?
Oh, yeah, we're way. And I'm just talking about an aircraft carrier. I'm not talking about frigates. I'm not talking about cruisers, Aegis cruisers. I'm not talking about more upgraded, more sophisticated ships. Now, granted, all your 21st century ships need less people, but they still have to have staffing for qualified staffing for all those folks. And here's a really good part. You're going to love this part. They all have to be in coordination with the convoys and the fleets. So in other words, if you take an aircraft carrier out to sea, it has to have a submarine escort, it has to have a replenishment and an oiler, as well as frigates and destroyers, and at least one cruiser, all going with that one aircraft carrier as part of its convoy fleet that goes to sea, right? Well, they all have to be able to know how to move and maneuver at sea in good weather and bad weather and in combat situations, so they don't literally either run into each other, which can actually happen, or they don't shoot each other out of the sky. All right? So your naval aviators have to know how they can maneuver so that they can be a screen for the fleet, as well as the destroyers don't pick them up and think they're a bogey and a bad guy and shoot them out of the sky. This is all coordinated, and they have to go out to training so that they work the kinks out of this.
How long would training like that work? How long would it be?
6 months at the minimum.
Okay.
So that's just a naval situation. I'm not talking about the Air Force wings that need to be sent overseas for training purposes, because I, from my own experience, knows that flying in Europe is 180 degrees different than flying in Asia. It's way.
Explain that. What do you mean?
Okay, it's different because the topography. When you're in Europe, it's all mostly landmass, and basically, if you're ship to shore, you're only maybe 30 to 50 nautical miles off the shore, right? Off of the Bay of Biscay in France, or flying in the Med, it's very narrow. I mean, there's land masses almost everywhere you go, right? You go to the Pacific, it's all ocean.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And it's, you're looking for a dot, a speck, which is an island out in the middle of nowhere, right? And so it's all about vectoring and finding your locations of where you're going. And you got to keep your eyes on your fuel gauge so that, because if you're skirting a typhoon, which we call in the Pacific, that's another name for on the Atlantic, we call a hurricane. So if we're skirting a typhoon, you don't go through a typhoon.
No.
I mean, if you do, you're like wanting to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, in any emergency situation, I would imagine if you're running out of fuel, for example, you would rather emergency crash land somewhere on land versus the middle of the ocean.
No, you don't want to land in the ocean. Absolutely not.
No way.
No, you don't. And so the whole situation in the Pacific, which is like 3 times the size of the Atlantic, it's a whole different game. It's a whole different for ships, transports, aircraft. It's a whole different operation, and it's amazing how much effort. Like in the Pacific, well, let me just put it this way: if you're in the Atlantic, you know how many aircraft carriers you just need total? 3. 1 in the North Atlantic, 1 in the approaches to Gibraltar, and 1 in the Med. Doesn't matter if it's the Western or Eastern Med, just one of them there, right? If you're in the Pacific, you need 6 just to cover the same areas of responsibility. In the North Pacific, you got to have 2. In the Central Pacific, you got to have 2. In the South Pacific, you got to have 2. So there's 6 and 3. How many does that make? 9, right? Out of 11 aircraft carriers that we're supposed to have. And we haven't even talked about the Indian Ocean, which has to have 1 there too. So now you're at 10.
Pretty skinny.
Yeah. When you say you have 11 aircraft carriers.
So do you know, like, is anything in production, as far as like putting more in our stockpile?
It's supposed to be, the Enterprise is supposed to be coming on this year.
Okay.
The new Enterprise, the replacement for the old Enterprise.
So what would be a good stock to have after all this?
You mean as far as stock market?
No. As far as the number of ships that you have in inventory.
The Navy says the minimum it needs to cover the 7 seas is 350.
Oh my goodness! And you're talking we have 11?
No, I'm talking. That's just aircraft carriers. I'm just talking 350 total ships. Because as I was saying, one aircraft has all these other ships that go with it, right?
So how many aircraft carriers would be optimal?
14.
Okay, so we're behind, but not like
but when I say
behind.
we have 11, I'm telling you that 4 or 5 of them are in back at port being rehabbed.
Yeah. So pedal to the metal. Under the best circumstances, how long would it be if we started tomorrow until we had those 14?
Probably a decade.
Really?
It takes anywhere from 5 to 8 years to build one aircraft carrier.
A lot of stuff could happen in 10 years.
Well, yeah. You could already have lost a war before you get it out of dry dock.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's actually what happened to the Japanese. They had the unsinkable battleship that was ready for sea in 1945. And you know where it sank? At its berthing location by the United States Army Air Corps. They just brought wave after wave of bombers and just kept bombing it till it sunk down into Tokyo Bay.
I didn't.
Never went to sea.
That's a good story. I'm glad.
Yeah. But it was an unsinkable battleship. It was supposed to be the battleship that would have the same capacity as a Missouri-class battleship.
It's almost like when people make claims like that, it's destined to go wrong.
Yeah, there's no such thing as an unsinkable ship. There's no such thing as a completely stealth submarine. If they tell you that, they're lying through their teeth.
Yeah, right.
We have SOSA nets in the North Atlantic where you could literally walk from one buoy to the next, all the way from Iceland down to Cape Cod. Sonar buoys. Yeah. We have buoys about every. Well, it's classified, but let's just say every mile there's a sonar, which means that we're echoing off of the. We've got them all. The underwater seabeds are all type mapped, right? So So all we do is these boys just do echoes off of that area. If a submarine goes through it, bing, it goes pings right off.
I read not too long ago, but that a cable or something underneath the ocean, and it had something to do with Russia, I thought, somewhere over there.
Well, these are really bad. Well, the
Communication?
Russians had a underground cable, communications cable
That's what it
that went through the Gulf of Finland, and the Ukrainians came in there and they blew it up.
They did.
They blew the cable up. They cut it in half.
And this was recently
it was about a year ago.
Yeah.
They put depth charges down there, and then they waited for the charges to get to where the cable was at, and then they ignited them.
Interesting. Well, one for the Ukrainians.
Yeah. Well, and not just that, but the only aircraft carrier that the Russians had, the Moskva, they sunk it. The Ukrainians sunk it off of Sevastopol in the Black Sea.
Yeah, it's interesting. Did you see the press conference today?
I have not seen any news today.
So, Trump was talking about how everybody's asking him, when are you going to put these sanctions on Russia? And he's just like, well, he goes, I want to do that. He goes, but right now, he goes, I would put sanctions on Russia, and then NATO is still buying oil from Russia. So we need for NATO to stop buying oil from Russia. And then, you know what I mean? Then that would make these sanctions that I would put on them more effective. Otherwise, he's going back to this isn't our war. This isn't our thing. This is NATO's thing. So if we're putting sanctions on there, but you guys are still buying oil from them, it's kind of like cutting off your nose to
time.
Face.
It's not NATO that's purchasing the oil.
Well, certain companies or countries.
It's the European Union, which is NATO's part of that. European Union. They're buying. They're not actually buying. You got to give
some countries in NATO that were continuing to buy oil from.
It's called the sneaky peek economy. It's the black market economy. Mm-hmm. Here's what the Russians do. The Russians, they go ahead and they go to a country like India, or they go to a landlocked country like Bolivia, or they go to a country like Brazil, and they say, we'll sell you this oil for a discounted price. So if a barrel of oil is selling for 60, we'll sell it for 50. All right. And they buy it, and they'll actually take it to their refineries, refine it in if they need to have it into gasoline or diesel or whatever it is. And then they'll put it on a Panamanian ship, or they'll put it on one of them they like, a Cyprus ship or whatever. And then they'll ship it to Europe and sell it to them. It's still Russian oil that's just been converted by a second party and then put on a third party ship. So that basically the Europeans still buying Russian oil.
Yeah.
But they're saying, wink and a nod, oh, we're really not buying it. And
I got you.
And here's the sad part. The Saudis and the Qataris and the Omanis and the UAE, United Arab Emirates, have all said to the Europeans, we'll sell you the same oil for just about a little over what the Russians are selling it for you, and you don't have to worry about this embargo, right? You'll still get all the fuel and all of the oil you need to run your factories and heat your houses and stuff like that. But some of these European countries they don't care. One of the worst.
They want to be part of NATO for protection, but as far as how they affect other members, they couldn't care less.
Yeah, some of the worst offenders is like Spain, and another one would be, Austria. Of course, Austria is a neutral country; it's not part of NATO. But there's a lot, though they have said that they follow the sanctions, European Union sanctions. So there's countries out there that just blindly look the other way, and they're buying all of their oil from these Russian oligarchs through third and fourth party. They're just paper changes. People are just. And another big user is of course China. China is a big user of oil from Soviet or from the Russian Empire. So it's an insidious thing. And the president's right in the sense that why do you want us to put all these heavy sanctions? We'll sell you natural gas. We will give you unlimited liquefied natural gas. We'll ship it to you every single day. and it'd be cheaper than what the Russians are sending over the pipelines. But right now, Germany, big offender. Poland is not using it, but it transits through Poland, so they get paid a hefty transit fee. So there's Germany and Poland, and another big abuser is France when it comes to natural gas. So these countries that say that they're all in support of Ukraine, but they're still supplying the money and the materiel so the Russian army can slaughter Ukrainians in eastern Ukraine.
Yeah, that's his point. It's like, if you guys really want this
War
war
to
to
end.
end, let's stop doing business with them.
Yeah.
Just make them just be reliant on their own country for everything.
Well,
Isolate them.
you know what
Cut them off.
what the Europeans want us to do is they want us to go to Brazil, they want us to go to India, and they want us to go to these third countries that are taking this oil and converted it onto and go to doing an embargo. You know, if they leave port and they go out to the Eastern Med or something like that, they want us to board them and take their products off, the high seas. And that's part of our sanctions, right? And those sanctions would take a real...
And then explain to the audience what's an embargo again.
Embargo means that anything that crosses into international waters either can be sunk or can be confiscated at sea because, you're telling the country, we're not going to trade with you.
It's kind of like civil forfeiture.
It's in high seas, yeah. It's an embargo. So we say anything. We've right now, there's been an embargo on Gaza for 15 years. Nothing can come in through Egypt. Nothing can come in from the Mediterranean. Nothing goes through from Lebanon. None of that stuff is allowed to go into Gaza because when Hamas took over, they're a terrorist organization. We're not going to give them. They take, when foreign countries like, say, France or Switzerland or something sends concrete and rebar to Gaza, you think that they're building high rises and building streets and stuff with it? Because that's what they say on the manifest.
Yeah,
no, they're building underground tunnels for Hamas. Underground cities is what they're building. And it's no different than when we say we're going to do a embargo of Russian oil. It's only effective if all the countries stop buying it. And if they continue to buy it, then the embargo is completely ineffective. It's all a paper chase at that point. And so we're not actually, and the sad part is, who's dying? It ain't the French, it ain't the Germans, and it ain't the Poles. It's the Ukrainians that are dying. And the Ukrainians, people don't realize that there's 7 times the amount of Russians as there are the Ukrainians. So the Ukrainians have to kill 7 Russians when they lose 1 soldier to be at parity on the front line.
And that's the entire population. That's not the...
Yeah. And, because these are countries that don't have open sources of their populations and their men and material that are being diminished through war. Like, we do the same thing when we're in a military conflict. We don't tell our enemies how many of our soldiers die. We don't tell them how many of our soldiers are wounded. We just say hundreds or thousands who were wounded or whatever the case is. And right now, this is an estimate because there aren't any real hard, fast numbers, but the Russians have lost close to 1 million soldiers.
Wow.
They've lost. When I say lost, I don't mean that's killed in action, missing in action, and wounded in action. 1 million. 1 million. We fought a war in Vietnam for 14 years. We lost 56,000.
Yeah, I thought it was like 65 or something.
And another 250,000 wounded, right? Think of the scars that we did over a 14-year period. The Russians have lost in 3.5 years, lost 1 million. And the Ukrainians have lost 600,000 or 700,000. So, the Ukrainians in a war of attrition, they're losing because as long as the Russians still have men and material to throw into cannon fodder, and it literally is cannon fodder, you got these young recruits that get like 3 to 6 weeks of training, give them a rifle with 1 or 2 mags and say, go. And then they get slaughtered by artillery and machine gun fire and rockets. I mean, the battlefield along the Eastern Front is soaked in blood. literally, just like
it's not
like Flanders
hand-to-hand.
Field.
It's not hand-to-hand combat anymore. It's
No, you don't
basically
even
blowing
see your
shit
enemy.
up.
No. They're close enough to see you, they're overrunning you.
Mm-hmm.
That means that literally the Ukrainians have run out of machine guns and run out of rockets and run out of 155 shells to stop them.
Right.
So when the Russians take over a city or a town or something like that, because it's not because the Ukrainians couldn't defend it, it's because they ran out of ammunition and they either had to die or retreat.
Right.
Because they're not giving up their land, they're not retreating willy-nilly. That's not happening. So it's an ugly situation. But
It is.
yeah. But going back to the Department of War, so we've got a real bad situation here where we have to replace. Everybody talks about these vaunted F-22s and F-16s and stuff like. We're talking about aircraft that have been around for 40 years. 15s is 45 years. Been in inventory for. They've got new airframes. But the basic quality and capability and technology of these aircraft are about the same. So we're fighting the majority of our aircraft, the majority of our ships, the majority of our tanks and armored personnel carriers that are in the field today are 20th century technology.
So what kind of technology is here that our current ships don't have?
Well, ships.
I'm sorry, the aircraft. I keep saying ships, but
aircraft. Well, avionics it's basically it's not so much the air-to-air missiles or the air-to-ground missiles. It's more about the stealth technology, so you can't see them, you can't hear them, you can't see them, and all of a sudden hell breaks loose. And because the center area probable, which means the area of where a bomb actually center hits, right now is like 1 meter. 1 meter is the size of our desk right here.
Yeah.
That's
pretty accurate.
Yeah, they're shooting this thing from 30,000 feet.
Yeah, back in the old days, it was all about your timing.
Yeah, and you were hoping that the wind didn't.
Yeah.
You had little propellers on the backs of these bombs and stuff, so they would kind of stay in one place. But the munitions that we have today, like the JDAMs and all this stuff is incredibly accurate. So if you're going to say you're going to take a Mark 82 or a Mark 84 bomb, which puts the size of a crater of about 20 feet down and 18 to 90 feet wide, depending on what you're aiming at, right? That's a hole. One bomb, one hole. Nothing survives that. The heat and the blast and the shrapnel, it just vaporizes everything within, a couple 100 yards.
Wow.
Yeah, vaporizes everything. So when this is what's happening to Gaza right now, the Israeli Air Force Defense Force is just literally vaporizing in Gaza as we speak. Literally, as I speak, there'll be not one building standing in Gaza City by Friday. That's tomorrow, by the way, folks. Nothing will be standing. And all those Hamas guys, they're not in the open. They're not out there in the rubble. They're like 80 to 90 feet underground. But the problem with them is if you drop a bomb to the left of their tunnel and to the right of their tunnel, they're now buried alive. Got nowhere to go. I don't, but the Israeli Defense Force wouldn't go into an operation without having probably a 90% expectation of success.
Yeah.
So, they're just as good as we are. And sometimes some of the things that they do are better than we do. So when they say they're going into a city, and remember, they've been talking about this like for 4 or 5 months. That's how long it's taken them to figure out all the stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So their only concern is to figure out where the 20 surviving maybe alive hostages are at, and they're trying to figure out how they can get them before the Hamas kills them. That's the whole thing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure by the end of the Gaza City, most of those hostages will all be corpses. That's what we're all afraid of. Oh no, it's just a reality. Yeah. The families might as well just do the memorial now. Unfortunately. That's a hard, cold reality of war. And if you're taken as a hostage and your enemy doesn't care about your life and certainly don't care about their own lives, then it's a zero-sum game for them. But this is the same situation going in the tunnels in World War II against the Japanese. You know, we got to the point where we stopped going in. We just sealed them alive. You know, we just blew up the air vents, sealed the entrance and exits, and let them suffocate.
It's a sad situation, but it's almost like there has to be a message, you know, a deterrent that nobody would think about the whole hostage thing since the original Iran back in 79 and before. I was 16 back then, but I don't think I remember historically where hostages outside of keeping prisoners of war, which is kind of, I guess, the same thing in a way, but that was war. Yeah. Whereas you're kidnapping hostages or something like that.
It's just terrorism.
That's exactly what it is. So,
organized thuggery is what it is.
Yeah. Where it's like if you do something like that, that's a death sentence for you. Every country in the world is going to be looking for you. That's just something we have to get terrorist organizations where it's a tool that they use, obviously.
Well, you know, there's all
got to send a message.
There's all kinds of ways to deal with terrorists. You can either drop bombs on them, or you can go in there with troops, which means there'll be a lot of casualties on our side. You can kind of like what the president's new policy in the Caribbean is. We haven't even talked about that. It's you leave a narco state like Venezuela, or if you leave the shores of Colombia, or you leave on the Pacific side, you leave Peru or something like that. And as soon as you leave the 12-mile marker, and we're watching you, we used to try to interdict. Now they're just saying, we're going to drop a bomb on you and blow you up, you out.
And you can only assume that they have the intelligence and, to know what these guys are doing. They've heard conversations and things like that electronically. Question is, what would stop these cartels from blackmailing somebody else and forcing them to get on the boat and say, if you don't get on this boat,
nothing.
We're going to kill your family if you don't do this.
I'm sure that they've already been doing that. I mean, that's no difference than the whole program that they're doing. They make more money on.
But that would mean that we're blowing up innocent people, though, that are kind of caught in the crossfire.
That could actually happen. But in wartime, more civilians die than military people.
Yeah.
It's just collateral damage that happens. It's not our fault that they're on that boat by force.
Yeah, the cartel's the one that's putting them in harm's way.
Yeah, well, by the time the cartel gets them to wherever they're going to shoot them anyway. They're going to kill them anyway. So the hostages, once the hostages are taken by the cartels, they've got maybe less than 10% chance of surviving, regardless of what anybody does for them. So, I mean, they're just they're casualty of the drug war that's going on.
Right.
They just are. But I was going to say that today, the money in the cartels isn't cocaine and heroin. It's human smuggling, human trafficking. That's where the money's at. And you know why it's big money? Not because they get $4,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 per person. That's not the reason. The reason it's money is because they get that every year. When those people come to America, they have a debt to pay.
Yeah.
And if they charge them $6,000, just use any number, $6,000.
Same type of thing. If you don't do this, we'll hurt your family.
Yeah, and every year you got to give them another $6,000, and next year another $6,000.
Right.
It never ends. You know what I'm saying? Unless you can get your families out of the country where the narcos are operating, it's a never-ending stream of money for these people.
It's kind of like, true or not, it's kind of like the storyline that a lot of immigrants that are seeking asylum use too, saying that their family is in danger because of some cartel or something like that, whether it's true or not. Well, it's something that people have been saying.
Yeah, there's a lining of truth in there.
Right.
But it's if you let 10 million people in, there's not 10 million asylum seekers.
Right.
You might be lucky if you get 500,000 true asylum seekers. That meets the bare minimum of our requirements for asylum. So, but still 500,000, a lot of people.
Sure.
But, unfortunately, we have a situation today where we've let every literally mental institution, every hostile criminal prison, these countries have literally emptied their prisons and their insane asylums and run them through the cartels into the United States.
It's hard to imagine how that just wasn't a coordinated thing, of course.
So we were talking about drug interdiction. We still interdict drugs. That didn't stop the Coast Guard or the Navy from doing that. It just says, if you're going to be brazen and open about this, we're just going to blow you out of the water.
And this is particular right now to Venezuela.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like we're blowing every boat out of the water that's in international waters.
No,
it's specific to that country.
Yeah. But we've also told Cuba the same thing.
Yeah.
Cuba, we told Cuba that a couple of years ago, and they just stopped it. Now they don't do boats anymore. They do large container ships, or they do aircraft.
Wow.
That's how Cuba moves their drugs into the United States. They're not going by ship at all. They haven't done that for quite a while because we told them that we were going to blow them out of the water too. I mean, the Biden administration never did it, but just the sheer fact the United States said we were going to do it, they took it out of word that we probably at some point would do that.
All that administration did was say, "Don't."
Right.
Don't.
I mean, nobody was worried about the Biden administration ever doing anything that would be hostile or tough because they never did. You know, they were all bluster and even they admitted that they what they were telling you wasn't the truth anyway. So they didn't scare anybody. They might have scared themselves. They saw their shadow and they got worried.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
so what's your solution to this Indo-Pacific situation?
well, that's what I want to talk about next, and that's really, really scary. People don't realize that the People's Republic Army, which is what it's PRA is it's kind of a nomenclature for like the Department of War. People's Liberation Army means the Navy, the Air Force, the Coast Guard, all of that is combined under that terminology. But their Navy, which used to be a local Navy that along the coastlines of China, has now gone into a deep sea Navy. They have two fully functional aircraft carriers that have gone through the along the coasts of Indochina, along the Chinese, Taiwan, Philippines area, and then the outer area into Micronesia and Guam and gone out to Papua New Guinea and Australia. They've actually circumnavigated Australia completely and gone into the Indian Ocean. These are complete fleets of Chinese aircraft carrier with all of the supporting ships. So, and that's just two. And they're producing a new aircraft carrier on their program. Their long-term program is every 3 years, a whole new aircraft carrier coming out. So they'll have the same amount of aircraft carriers that we have by 2030. Or if, it could be sooner. We don't know. I mean, it's gotten, the Pacific is, it's if you want to look at, people say history repeats itself. It doesn't, but it does rhyme. And what the Chinese are doing is identical to what the Japanese did in the early 1930s. They're just doing it in the 2020s, but they're doing exactly the same thing. They're going into island hopping. They're going into taking over reefs and turning them into islands. They're doing exactly the same thing, except with modern 21st century technology. The only difference is what it used to take 4 or 5 years to build a base, they were doing it 4 or 5 months. So, and you know who's paying for that? The U.S. taxpayer. We are funding the People's Liberation Army. We're funding it with our contractors. We're funding it with our money. I mean, we're literally, just like we did with the Japanese. How do you think the Japanese built all of their ships and all of their bullets and ammunition? We supplied them with the scrap iron. We supplied them with the coal. We supplied them with all the basic raw material they needed to have a war machine.
And why do we do this?
Because it's all about corporations and money.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing back in the 30s. I mean, if the Philippines was part of the United States at the time, but let's just say the U.S. government in the Philippines was willing to pay $500 a ton for iron ore, the Japanese were going to give you $1,000. So who do you think they're going to sell to? To the Philippines or to the Japanese? Yeah. And the Chinese are doing the exact same thing, except that they're extorting the companies for their trade secrets so that they can cheaply rebuild it in their own factories for what we've produced on our design capabilities for whatever the military products are. Because a lot of civilian items have military purposes.
So how come we can't break out national security as a reason not to do business with them?
We are, but I mean,
or disallow a corporation to do business with them, I guess.
We're trying to do that, but take NVIDIA, for example, which is a chip manufacturer, and they produce high quality, high value chips. And what runs all of our equipment? Microchips, right?
Yeah.
And the Japanese, or not the Japanese, but the Chinese have figured out, they're not smart enough or quick enough to design this stuff, but they are fast enough and quick enough to build this stuff. So once they get the design capabilities from us, they just have to start manufacturing it. And they're really heavy into manufacturing. So even if they don't get the chips from us, they just get the design and build their own chips. So in essence, NVIDIA comes over there and becomes a very wealthy company, but it becomes wealthy off of our money. Because the Chinese, when they pay for these chips, they're using the money that we buy toys from, or the money that we buy hats from, or we buy clothing from. They just take that money and use it to build these factories.
They're using the same business model as the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, yeah. It's an international consortium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
and it's
facts.
all about who makes the money. I mean, when you're in a world that everybody lives by the same rules and everybody says, that's your country and this is my country, then that works, right? And free enterprise and open and free markets, that does work. But when you have a country that says, hey, we're going to cheat, lie, and steal, and look you in the face and tell you we're going to cheat, lie, and steal, but we're going to pay you to cheat, lie, and steal, and you go, okay, as long as I get my dollars or my euros or my rubles or whatever the case is, they don't care.
Yeah, it's like being able to be part of a corruption franchise.
Yeah, it's like organized crime.
Skimming.
Yeah, and
A lot of Guidos out there.
yeah, well, everybody wants their 5%.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sound like a lot, except when you're talking about trillions. 5%, I don't know about you, but $50 billion sounds like a lot of money to me.
Do you think there's any Guidos out there that are actually truly nice, caring people? Or is
No.
it just goes with the name, right?
I mean, they don't even care about their own family. I mean, they just as well as take them out as anybody else. Hey, that's more for me.
Right? Yeah. Kind of goes with
yeah.
the territory.
I mean, people think, it's kind of funny because people think that there's honor among thieves and there's a code of honor among criminals. That's
No.
Hollywood fiction. Criminals can't wait to turn somebody in
Yeah.
so they can look when they get caught. When they get caught, you know what their only concern is? They have to do some time, and therefore it's all about
Yeah,
themselves,
minimize
right?
it, yeah.
Yeah. So how can I minimize the amount of time I have to do in prison? So I'll turn in my grandmother, Maya Brega, if I have to get a lesser sentence. I mean, this is how they.
I got to flip on Graham.
Yeah. I mean, when they're talking about, somebody's taking out grandma, yeah, it's the criminals that are taking out grandma. Because if they can lower their sentence, they will. And that's really criminal thinking. And now you got whole countries like Venezuela where you have Maduro, who is literally on one of the 10 most wanted lists. We have an outstanding warrant for him, arrest. He can't leave the country.
Yeah, international.
We have an outstanding, and you know how much the reward on his head is?
It's like 10 million or something.
$50 million.
50 million. He knows somebody that would give him up.
Oh, yeah. That's why he won't leave the country. If he actually tried to go, say, to Peru or go to Colombia, he'd be toast. Yeah.
How does he keep his own people from not wanting to cash in now?
Well, he actually, I don't know this, but I've been told that he doesn't even trust his own personal guard.
You would think the
doesn't
paranoia
use
is just off the...
He uses Cubans and Iranians as his personal guard.
Does he pay him $50 million?
You know what he pay? I'm pretty sure he pays them very well. Loyalty is only as good as you get paid, right?
Right.
But these people they hire only fiercely loyal people.
Yeah.
And as long as they're being paid and he makes sure they get paid, It's like Libya. Libya had these female guards that were fiercely loyal to him. But when the country fell apart, you know what happened to his guards? They all decided to get the first flight out of Tripoli.
Yeah.
Because
don't blame them.
Yeah, well, self-preservation.
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out when everything is falling apart, maybe it's time to go.
That's a crazy world on the wrong side of the law.
Well, it's doggy dog.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody knows that if you're in a continuing criminal enterprise, your life expectancy is only as good as how good the organization is. When the organization is young and strong, it'll last a while.
Yeah,
but when it gets old and meek and weak, then it just falls apart. All of them work that way. I mean, Trinidad Agua has taken out a lot of the old Bloods and Crips and just wiped them off the map because most of the really vicious guys are in their 60s.
Yeah, you don't even hear about Bloods and Crips anymore.
Right, because they're gone. That's because that organization has been superseded by other organizations.
Right.
Younger, more deadly, more thrifty. And these organizations have gone to children. Mm-hmm. They've gone to children soldiers. Kids that, we're not talking about 15-years. We're talking about 11-year-olds.
Especially like in Cali, where you got liberal laws anyway that don't really prosecute criminals. And then, they're saying if you're a juvenile, then you can really get away with stuff.
Yeah, because you can't be prosecuted.
Right.
You go through the juvenile referral program.
Yeah, same type of thing. Hey, you come join this gang. We'll always make sure that your grandma's, taken care of. Nobody's going to mess with her.
Right, or your mama. These kids are 11 and 12 years old. They give them guns. And they do the spray and pray method of shooting. They don't know how to shoot, but they know how to pull a trigger, right? Mm-hmm. And then they send them out there to do carjackings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They don't have when you're 11 and 12 years old and all you've done is video games. Mm-hmm. You have no fear. No, life doesn't mean nothing. To them. It's just a video game to them. What they call that. When was the big one when we were younger? It was a car chase. What was that called?
Oh, Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. Yeah. Except this is GTA, Grand Theft Carjack.
I think they got like 16 or something like GTA 16. I can't remember. There's a lot of them though, and it's kept getting worse and worse as far as like the violence and.
Oh yeah.
You got to keep ratcheting up the game.
Yeah, I mean it gets more vicious all the time, and therefore these young children are desensitized to the point where, they're just children soldiers or children thugs. In Africa, they just give them cot or they give them narcotics so that they take them from their parents. If their parents resist, they just kill the parents and they use them as children soldiers. That's been going on for like 2 or 3 decades in Central Africa.
Yeah. Do you think our Secretary of War, Mr.
Pete Hegseth?
Yeah, Mr. Hegseth, is he gonna take care of all this stuff that you're bringing up concerns about?
Well, he's certainly going to try, but it still takes Congress and it still takes the administration and the bureaucracy.
The budget part of it.
Yeah.
Getting that stuff approved.
It's not even, people all think that if you have an appropriations and you have a budget and then you actually have money allocated to organizations that things get built. That ain't how it works.
Especially in California with the railway.
Yeah, there's not even one yard of track.
No tracks.
No tracks. Billion. 2008. We'll have it fully operational and running from Los Angeles to San Francisco by 2020. Now, last I looked, we're 5 years past 2020. No tracks have been laid, but here's a new modification. We're not going from LA to San Francisco. We're going from Bakersfield to Merced.
Bakersfield.
Yeah, we're going from moving out of wheat fields and cotton fields up to Merced, where we have cattle and goats. That's where we're going to move this high-speed railway. Oh, but by the way, we did say we adjusted it to 2033, but now we're looking at 2036. So it's just
sounds like a scam.
It's just a boondoggle scam. It's all about giving money to unions, giving money to contractors, and buying off people for 1 acre of land at a time. And for that 1 acre that used to be a dairy farm, getting normally the value of that property was $2,000 to $3,000 an acre. They're getting $20,000 or $30,000 an acre.
Yeah.
Who's paying for that? I'd say the citizens of the great state of California, because the Fed said, we're done. You've already raked the federal government for like $6 or $7 billion. We're not giving you any more.
No mas.
Yeah. Go find the money from some other saps, because you're not getting it from the federal government anymore. So, yeah. I mean, this is how bureaucracies work. So talking about the budget and the allocation, one of the biggest problems is that we used to have, like for aircraft, you were talking about building 5 stealth fighters and stuff like that. We used to have 10 or 12 factories that made fighter jets. Now we have 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
So to build up to the amount that Pete and the Air Force says and the Navy says and the Marines say that they need, you have to build 5 or 6 more aircraft factories to build these aircraft, to just meet the timeline for active inventory.
And train those workers.
Yeah. And that's the problem they're running with ships. When we were talking about ships, you know how many ships that the Navy builds in a year?
In a year? Half of one?
It's usually 2 to 4.
Oh, really? Okay.
2 to 4 ships in a year. You know how many the Chinese do in a year?
10.
200.
What?
Yeah. 200.
We're 1% of what they do?
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true.
Oh,
Yeah. Scary, isn't it?
yes.
Yeah. And a lot of those ships are dual use. They
Yeah,
can
you
be
don't
used
wanna
for
get
civilian
into-
purposes. They can be used for military purposes. Think about it. Think about if you have a cargo ship, right? Does it matter if it's farm machinery or is it tanks? It still moves cargo, right?
Right.
So if they're building all kinds of transport ships and stuff like that, all that can be used to move men, material, and equipment.
Oh, I see. When you're saying ships, it's not necessarily military ships. You're talking cargo ships, all kinds of ships.
Yeah, but even just talking about military, strictly military, they're building 50 or 60 a year.
Mm-hmm.
We're building 2 or 4.
Right.
Yeah, strictly, cruisers and destroyers and Corsairs and stuff like that. They're building, when we build 1 every other year, they build 4 or 5 a year, just the one class of ship.
How many do they have currently in inventory versus what we currently have in inventory total?
They're probably 60 or 70% close to us right now, and their projections are to be parity by 2027.
Yeah, and you're saying that a bunch of ours are like 40 years behind.
Oh, some of them are 50 or
like
60 years.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, seems like there's some areas where we can get some production done. We got to, get some more manufacturing plants and stuff.
Well, we have the same problem that the rest of Europe has. We don't have any people who can weld.
Right.
We don't have any people who can do electrical work.
It's a lot for taking those out of our schools, the vocational training.
Yeah. And these are really good paying jobs.
Oh, yeah.
But there's no people, I want to get an engineering degree in nomenclature. Or I want to get an English degree in pottery.
An engineering degree in nomenclature. That is hilarious.
But, so I just want to sit behind a desk and play on a computer. I don't want to go out there with my hands and actually build something or manufacture something or be part of a big organization that makes amazing stuff.
Well, hopefully the schools will get back into it. I know that there's been a big push, for the vocational gap, and they're, starting to reinstitute welding and shop class and metal and wood.
Oh, yeah.
And all that stuff.
And you know why that is? Because students are realizing I'm going to school
for nothing.
And I'm coming out of college. If I graduate, that there's not a guarantee I'll graduate, but let's just say I do my 4-year college degree in pottery or in women's studies or whatever the case is, and then you find out you can't get a job, but you still have a $250,000 debt.
Yeah,
you're going to be paying that debt off until you die.
Yeah, you can't do it. It's not making sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Why would I even if I go to school for a degree that actually has purpose? Let's just say I have a degree in architecture or something, which you actually build stuff with, right?
Right.
you can't get a job with an undergraduate degree in architecture. You have to get a master's degree.
Right.
So now you're adding on to your 250 another 180. So now you're at $500,000.
Yeah.
You know, even if you get a job right out of college, which a lot of them don't, but let's just say you do because you're not working as a barista, you're actually going to get a job, entry-level job. Maybe it's $80,000 a year.
Maybe.
Well, maybe
$80,000
a year. And if you eventually move up to the top job, you get $300,000 a year. Well, you're still not paying off that debt because that $500,000 debt has an interest payment to it. So if its interest payment is 3 or 4%, you never get it paid off.
Oh, it's higher than 3 or 4%.
I know, but I'm just saying, if it was 3 or 4%, if you just paid $20,000 a year, so you're 1/5 of your income of $80,000,
Yeah.
you took that and you put it toward your schooling, right? It would take you 30 years to pay it off.
Oh, for sure. And that's the thing. I mean, we should fix stuff like that. You know, the predatory lending, taking advantage of young kids like that. Because
Oh, I know.
yeah,
These are
It's
young
not right.
kids that are 17 or 18. They don't know about money.
no,
All they know is they want to get an education.
having to file for bankruptcy before they're 30.
But even if you file for bankruptcy, you can't use it against your student loan.
Well, that's true. That's true.
not a bankruptcy item. You still have obligations.
Yeah, it's almost like the game is rigged.
Oh, yeah, it is. And the education system. So if they took away guaranteed federal student loans and only gave them for purposeful reasons,
Mm-hmm.
you know how much the cost of tuition would be in these major institutions? They dropped by 90%.
Yeah. Well, it's like where did it go where everybody had to go to college? Like college is not made for everybody.
It never was.
Right. And like I think back in the day it's like about 1/3 of our students went to college.
Well, when I
And now
I
it's like
graduated in
60-some%.
1975, so I started college in 1971.
Right.
Graduated, so that was over 55 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But so, well, it's 50 years ago since I graduated, but it was been 54 years since I started college, right? So college at 1971, and this is during the Vietnam War. This is when people went to college just so they didn't go in the military, right?
Right.
Even though they actually eliminated the 2S deferment and all that stuff later on. But saying that people go to college for an education, that was only 15%. 15 topped out at 20% at certain states, but 15% of the population went to college.
Yeah.
But after the Vietnam War and by the time that Reagan became president in the early 80s, the secondary education, that means from primary to secondary, for people elementary and secondary, they were telling everybody, if you want to make money, you have to get a college education.
Yep.
So all these young kids graduating from high school were told, you ain't dog crap unless you get a college degree. And you won't get a really good paying job unless you have some sort of degree that goes next to your name. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be in basket weaving, but as long as you got a 4-year college degree, you'll get a really great paying job. Yeah. And if you go to welding school, or if you go to electrical school, or you go to plumbing or something like that, you'll make okay, but you'll never make the kind of money you'll make if you have a 4-year college degree. That was a big lie.
Right.
Total lie. Because you now went from 15 to 20% of the population to 50 or 60% of the population. Yep. So 4-year college degree became as valuable
Saturated.
as a 4-year high school
Everybody
degree.
has one. It's kind of like it replaced your high school diploma. Everybody pretty much has your high school diploma. You at least had to get your high school diploma. Most people did.
Right.
And then now that's, kind of like, most people
high
do
school
have
diploma
a
is
bachelor's.
meaningless.
Yeah, well, it is now.
Well,
yeah.
Have you heard about the grade inflation that they're doing in secondary and high schools? You don't even have to show up and you graduate.
Oh, I know.
You don't even
so
have.
bad.
They're giving people graduating with honors who are functionally illiterate.
Yeah, they get a scholarship to a college, and then when they get to the college,
They can't read or write.
They can't read or write. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It all started with participation trophies.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this is our society in general.
Yeah.
So if you're an employer and you want somebody to come there and be able to get on the computer and do some reading and interact with people at the front desk, these college or these high school kids can't even greet people. They can't look you in the eye. All they're doing is down there at their screen. Well, you're not allowed to use your screen if you're going to greet people, right? They don't even know how to do that.
Yeah, and then they say, they'll flip the pad around just like that's if you want to give us a tip.
I know. Yeah, I'm introducing you to how to get to the elevator. Please give me a tip.
Yeah, everybody's wanting a tip.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
It's really nuts. Well, I think we've covered a lot today, don't you?
Yeah,
I think we've, and I've wanted to talk about the Indo-Pacific, how bad it's gotten.
Right.
And we're in real deep trouble out there. And, the Department of War, now that it's appropriations, we're when we say we have $1 trillion in operational money, to actually have the same purchasing power of what $1 trillion, we need $2 trillion.
Right.
And then we need the people to be able to run the military so that you can get something out of your $2 trillion, which we don't have. I mean, we literally have people in the Pentagon who have never left the building in 20 years, and they're paid $150,000 to $200,000 a year to walk in and do absolutely nothing but fill out little memos to their other boss, who sends a memo to that guy, who sends it to a different department. I mean, by the time the actual document that needs to be looked at by the senior people, it's been looked at by 13 other departments and 15 people.
Yeah, I hope that we can get Doge back in.
Yeah.
Send us off, Rick.
All right. Thanks for everybody listening. Remember, say thank you to a veteran and a first responder. They're out there to save your life, and we appreciate everything they do. Thank you so much.